and welcome to World of Africa with me, Erik Njoka. This week we spotlight the migrant issue where thousands are being dumped in the desert, end up camping in the coasts of Libya and Senegal after fleeing Tunisia. Governments in these countries are in limbo over how to handle the influx and humanitarian situation. When will this migrant epidemic end? That's coming up shortly. We begin in the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia is again on the precipice. Ethiopia's federal government has acknowledged the loss of control over certain districts and towns to militia fighters in the Amhara region, escalating the conflict in Africa's second most populous nation. Residents have reported intense gunfire and military aircraft sightings in various areas. The Amhara region has been under a 6-month state of emergency declared by Ethiopia's cabinet, following clashes and mass protests linked to a plan to integrate regional forces into the military. This effort by the federal government to consolidate security powers has arisen in the aftermath of a 2-year-long conflict in the Tigray region. Here now is a report from Bahir Dar.
The cloud of conflict and desperation was beginning to clear after the Ethiopian government signed a peace deal with Tigrayan forces nearly 7 months ago. A war that killed thousands and displaced millions. But now there's a new threat emerging in the Amhara region. Ethiopia's second most populous region is gripped by instability since April, after federal authorities moved to disarm Amhara's security forces following the end of the devastating 2-year war in the neighboring Tigray region. Authorities last year also tried to dismantle the informal Amhara militia known as Fano. Ethiopian PM Abiy Ahmed declared a state of emergency in the Amhara region after authorities pleaded for help as clashes intensified there between regional forces and the military. The region's leaders say regular law enforcement is no longer able to contain the violence. Residents reported fighting across the Amhara region as militia members attacked army units and protesters blocked roads. Flights to 2 popular tourist towns, Lalibela and Gondar, were suspended. Internet access was also affected. Late last year, the Ethiopian federal government and rebel authorities in Tigray reached a cessation of hostilities agreement in South Africa less than 48 hours before the 2nd anniversary of the deadly conflict between them and northern Ethiopia. Images of tanks and weapons emerged outside Mekelle as Tigrayan rebels reportedly begun handing over their heavy weapons, a key part of the peace deal to end the conflict. But months after peace prevailed, reports of hunger and malnutrition have surfaced. This hospital in Mekelle has reported an increase in emaciated children from Tigray.
Starting from April and May, in the northwest, in east and in southwest zones, we are getting reports from the lower administrations of the zones, Woredas and Kebeles, that people are dying. So far, 595 people have died from hunger directly and indirectly.
WFP is deeply concerned about the impact any pause in assistance may have on the lives of the families it assists. This is why we're urgently putting every practical safeguard in place to ensure food assistance reaches and is used by the intended beneficiaries.
The World Food Programme says about a fifth of the 6 million people in Tigray were severely food insecure in February. In Ethiopia, 20 million people out of a total of 120 million rely on assistance. Aid flows to Tigray resumed after the November ceasefire, but were temporarily halted earlier this year. The WFP and US Agency for International Development, both major donors, said they paused flows because some aid was being diverted from those in need. Ethiopia's government criticized the halt, but said it is investigating the diversion claims. The WFP said it hoped to resume in July, however no development has been reported yet. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Hundreds of people from several African countries have been expelled from Tunisia. Thousands of refugees from African countries want to reach Europe, but they are stranded on the border between Libya and Tunisia. The Tunisian government wants them out, but Libya will not let them in. Here's a report.
Most of them take days, walk endlessly across the scorching sun in the Sahara before arriving in Libya, which is the closest in their route. These migrants are fleeing Tunisia and are headed to Europe. Libyan coast guards are deployed at the uninhabited area near Al-Asa to assist them. This group of migrants is stranded for about a month in Libya and is suffering food and water shortages.
We were arrested by the Tunisian government in the city of Sfax and transferred to Libyan territory. Now, we are exposed to the worst kind of human suffering. Cold, misery, heat and rain, suffering here for about 4 weeks. Governments, regional and international organizations must find a humane solution for us. An emergency solution, whether from the Tunisian government or from any international or local organizations. A solution is super necessary.
Tunisia's interior minister conceded that small groups of sub-Saharan migrants trying to enter the country are pushed back into the desert border areas with Libya and Algeria. But he claimed that allegations of mistreatment of migrants by the UN and humanitarian groups are false. However, situation on the ground tells a different story. Peto, a migrant from Cameroon, looks at pictures on his phone in trauma. They show him with his wife and daughter, all having carefree smiles before their death. His life was shattered when the three got separated on a trek through the desert between Tunisia and Libya on a day in mid-July that changed his life completely. After working for 7 years at various jobs in Zouara, some 120 kilometers west of Tripoli, Peto decided to go to Tunisia with his Ivorian wife and child.
After several attempts to cross, without success of course, we tried to go to Tunisia to enroll the child in a school. Because since she was born until her death, she has never been to school. So that's the reason we went to Tunisia.
Tunisia's eastern coast, the port city of Sfax, has become the main launching point for migrants, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, to get to Italy and other parts of Europe in small boats. Influx of migrants into Sfax and other points have resulted in frictions with the local population. Last month, a Tunisian died in the clashes. The Tunisian government has often decried arguments from several Western nations that the country should stand as a border guard to the migrants who cross over from the continent to Europe. Several unions have supported President Kais Saied's refusal of Tunisia acting as the police for migrants.
The West must understand that we are not its border guards. They colonized Africa and the other countries for many years. It is about time to implement real development in these countries so people can live in dignity and prosperity in their countries.
Meanwhile, thousands of migrants have been transferred to a desolate Sahara military area on the border with Libya. This is where most of them end up, if they are lucky enough to withstand the desert heat. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Zimbabwe's main opposition leader has accused President Emmerson Mnangagwa of violating the law and tearing apart independent institutions to cling to power. Nelson Chamisa, who will challenge Mnangagwa and the ruling ZANU-PF party's 43-year-old hold on power in an August 23rd vote, claimed widespread intimidation against his opposition party ahead of the elections. But what do these elections really mean for the South African nation? Here's a report from Harare.
The election euphoria is heating up in Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans will vote on the 23rd of August to elect the president, legislature and the municipal council. President Emmerson Mnangagwa is fighting for his political survival and wants another term in office. The country's main opposition, Citizens Coalition for Change Party, headed by this man Nelson Chamisa, is speaking out against what it claims are oppressions from the ruling government. In July, a courthouse banned the CCC party from holding a rally 6 weeks before elections. The decision increased tensions in southern African nation, which has a history of violent and disputed elections. Chamisa says President Mnangagwa is violating the law and tearing apart independent institutions to cling to power.
Mnangagwa is clearly triggering a national crisis. is driving the country into chaos, is actually instigating instability, is violating the law, is tearing apart institutions of the country, is actually interfering with the organs of the state, undermining their independence, their professionalism, and their credibility. And what he's doing is, of course, the tendencies of a loser. He must be stopped because he can't drive the whole nation and plunge it into darkness and an abyss on account of just wanting to retain power. This country is bigger than Mnangagwa.
In rural areas far from the international spotlight, many of the Zimbabwe's 15 million people are making their political choices under the threat of violence. Mnangagwa has repeatedly denied allegations of intimidation and violence by authorities or his party and has publicly called on his supporters to act peacefully during the campaign.
This process is so peaceful. This is what we want. It should continue now, during the process of campaigning, during the elections, post-election. This is the peace we want as a mature democracy.
Zimbabwe was shunned by the West for 2 decades because of abuses during the regime of Robert Mugabe. After Mugabe's death in 2019, Emmerson Mnangagwa took charge and promised democracy and freedom would be reborn. Rights groups say it's a mirage. Under Mnangagwa, critics and opposition figures have been jailed. Some have faced legal backlash for seemingly minor criticisms, including a world-renowned author who was arrested for participating in a protest that called for better services for citizens. A court decision disqualified all 12 CCC candidates in Bulawayo, the second largest city, from standing in the election, even after the electoral agency said that they had registered properly. They successfully appealed to the Supreme Court to be allowed to stand.
There is a huge momentum in the country. We are having a lot of positive response. Our message is connecting, our message resonates, and our message is an endorsement of the expectations and the hopes and aspirations of the people of Zimbabwe. Countryside, rural areas, we've made significant inroads. We are actually the next government in Zimbabwe on account of the feedback we have been having. People are fed up. People are tired of this old system. They want a new and a clean government.
The elections will be monitored by observers from the European Union and African Union who were invited by Mnangagwa. He says he has nothing to hide. Zimbabwe has significant mineral resources, including Africa's largest deposits of highly sought-after lithium and rich agricultural potential, and could be of huge benefit to the continent if it gained the political and economic stability that has eluded it for years. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
In the underbelly of the Democratic Republic of Congo's sprawling capital, Kinshasa, a unique sport thrives under the moonlight. Catch-Fetiche, also known as Voodoo wrestling, is an extravagant Congolese sport where participants fight each other and use magic to try to win the match. It is judged based on 3 criteria: technique, courage, and magic.
As dusk settles in Inga district, the night splendor comes to life. The sound of the trumpets signaling the start of an event in the alleys of this area. There is a power cut, and under the moonlight in a poor quarter of Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, wrestler Maîtresse Libodance explains how she invokes her ancestors to cast spells that rout her opponents. She is a practitioner of Catch-Fetiche, also called Voodoo wrestling, a widely over-the-top Congolese sport where fighters grapple with each other and use magic to try and gain supremacy.
I'm asking the government to support us. It should provide us with a professional ring, a showroom, and organize our sport so that we are in order.
In the first bout, a male fighter in a woman's dress and boxing shoes downed his opponent with a spell and conjured up a burst of flames in the ring. One fight later, Maîtresse Libodance strode into the ring, parading to the music of the brass band. Her contest with Masamba was tough. Under her spell, she made the hypnotized pair dance to the music as she walked away victorious, to roars of delight.
I firmly controlled my opponent before coming here. I had already prepared myself well at home. He'd have to go home to prepare his incantations better.
In the fights I do, I can't win without fetishes or magic because my opponent also has fetishes. I have fetishes too. I need to have more power than him to dominate him.
Staged late in the evening on a rickety wrestling ring in a small school courtyard, the bouts attract about 200 people, paying 3,000 Congolese francs or over $1 for an adult ticket. These raucous scenes are a far cry from the well-heeled center of Kinshasa, which is currently hosting the Francophone Games, the French-speaking equivalent of the Commonwealth Games.
There are a lot of risk involved in these rituals. What's more, we make the sacrifices. To reach this level, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. It's no joke to have this snake in your hand. There are a lot of sacrifices involved.
According to the fighters, Voodoo wrestling is judged based on 3 criteria: technique, courage, and magic. Many wrestlers say they make a living solely from the fight winnings, with thousands of US dollars prize money for the larger events. Run deep in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which means that not everyone looks kindly on magic. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Artists in the continent are embracing a new trend called upcycling. One such artist is Nigerian Chibuike Ifedili Chukwu, who is using aluminium cans and transforming them into pieces of art. Check out his creations next.
Nigerian artist Chibuike is busy at a studio in Lagos. He creates portraits by weaving discarded aluminium beverage cans. Growing up with his grandmother, Chibuike would weave raffia strings to sleeping mats. Then he went to university and became more conscious of the environment and started using the same weaving technique but with a different medium.
From industrial activity to individual human activities, waste are being generated on daily basis and discarded with little or no thought the effect it has on the ecosystem, our environment. So I choose the path of collecting these waste and adding value to them, which I call upcycling.
Chibuike starts by cutting up beverage cans that he already picked up and disinfected. He cuts them into desired inches depending on what he wants to work on. He then weaves a plain canvas first with the shiny part of the beverage can before filling it with colored parts to bring out his desired pattern or portrait. A piece of his art can take from 200 to 1,000 beverage cans depending on the size. The artist has sold several dozens of his pieces which go for as high as $1,000 because of their lifespan and durability.
The work is a lifetime piece because one is produced with a metal, aluminium, which has a long lifespan, and that of plastic, which we know that it has a duration of close to 100 to 200 years to decay.
The 37-year-old says he sometimes pays people a token to keep their beverage cans for him or scavenge for them, but when he scavenges himself, People sometimes call him mad.
Basically, when you are in a waste bin to collect waste, we face the challenges of people addressing you like he doesn't know what he's doing, or they will see you as somebody, as a madman, for them, not for me, because I know what I'm doing.
So far, Chibuike has participated in over 30 group exhibitions, won several awards in saving the environment. He will be exhibiting his creations in London later this year. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
There are 54 nations in one big continent called Africa, each of them with their unique history, culture and story. This is a call to you, the viewer. Do you have an idea that you would like us to tell through a story on the show? If you do, then reach out to us. Tweet with the hashtag Wild of Africa and tell us the story and the country that you're watching us from. You never know, it might just feature on the program. Thanks for watching. I'm Erik Njoka. See you on the next episode.